Welcome to my channel Revenge Last. Here every story begins with trust and ends with justice. I never believed in warnings from strangers. Not until that night. They say betrayal doesn't start with a lie. It starts with silence. And I remember that silence so sharp, so cold, the moment my husband stopped looking at me the same way. My name is Evelyn Grace, founder of a small but thriving interior design firm in London. For years I thought I had it all. A loving husband, a growing business, a beautiful home that echoed with laughter. But lately, the laughter had become forced. His hugs mechanical. His eyes somewhere else. I told myself he was tired, overworked. After all, he just launched his own real estate company, the kind that demanded every bit of his attention. But deep down, beneath the polite smiles and the late-night texts he said were business, a part of me already knew. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. It started with the little things. The scent of unfamiliar perfume on his jacket. The way he guarded his phone as though it contained state secrets. And that night when he came home past midnight, whispering something about a client dinner. He smiled, kissed my forehead and said, "You know how these business deals go, love." I had to stay a bit longer. But the scent that lingered on him wasn't champagne or steakhouse cologne. It was jasmine, soft, sweet, undeniably feminine. And I don't wear jasmine. I remember staring at the ceiling that night, counting every second until dawn. Every whisper in my mind asked the same question. Who is she? But I didn't cry. Not yet. Because something inside me refused to be weak. I decided I wouldn't confront him, not until I had the truth in my hands. I'd been building companies long enough to know. You don't accuse without evidence. And you don't play your cards too soon. So I smiled through breakfast, wished him luck for the day, and watched him drive away, my husband of 7 years, unaware that the woman he betrayed was about to become the one thing he could never outsmart. They say revenge is best served cold. But mine would be elegantly plated. Like a 5-star dinner reservation he would never forget. The morning after my first real suspicion, I watched him leave for work, sharp suit, polished shoes, confidence in every step. He turned back briefly, smiled and said, "Don't wait up for dinner, Evie. I might have a late meeting again." A late meeting. Again. I smiled back just as I always did. But this time the smile wasn't for him. It was for me, for the version of myself that had finally woken up. Because I had a plan now. That morning I called my assistant, Nora, the most loyal employee I'd ever had. I kept my voice casual, as though we were discussing color palettes for a client's apartment. "Nora," I said, "could you check which real estate events my husband's company is sponsoring this week? I want to send flowers." Of course, I didn't care about the flowers. I wanted names, dates, locations, everything. Within an hour, she'd emailed me the full list. And there it was. Friday night, the Wellington Hotel, 8 p.m. A client dinner. That night, I drove to the Wellington myself. Not to confront, just to watch. The hotel's restaurant was wrapped in gold and glass. Elegant, romantic, and discreet. The kind of place where secrets thrived behind champagne smiles. I parked across the street and waited. And at exactly 8:15 I saw him. My husband. He wasn't alone. He wasn't alone. She stepped out beside him, tall, confident, wearing a silk dress that whispered with every move. Her laughter floated through the air as she touched his arm. It was the kind of laughter that women use when they want to be remembered. He looked at her the way he used to look at me. For a moment I couldn't breathe. 7 years of marriage. And I was nothing more than a chapter he'd already finished reading. I wanted to storm and shout, expose them both. But I didn't. Because emotion was his weapon, intelligence was mine. So I stayed in my car watching. Learning. They spent an hour at dinner, another half at the hotel bar. And then, as the night deepened, they disappeared into the elevator together. My heart broke quietly, piece by piece. But my mind, My mind was already sketching blueprints for what was coming next. The next morning I did what I always did. I made breakfast. I smiled. I listened to his stories about clients and contracts. And when he kissed my cheek before leaving, I almost laughed. Because he had no idea. No idea that I'd seen everything. No idea that the woman he betrayed had just begun to design the perfect revenge. You see, revenge isn't about shouting or breaking things. It's about patience, precision, timing. Just like in business, you wait for the perfect moment. When your opponent feels safe, unthreatened, certain they've won. That's when you strike. And so, I played the perfect wife. While secretly I began to map out my husband's world. His clients, his social circle, even his mistress. Her name, as it turned out, was Clara Bennett. Married. Art gallery owner. A woman with her own secrets to hide. And when I saw the photo of Clara with her husband, a quiet, refined man named Daniel, I knew instantly that fate had just handed me the final piece of my plan. They thought they could hide in the shadows. But I was already standing behind them, watching, waiting, smiling. Because the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about letting them walk straight into your trap with a smile. People often mistake silence for weakness. But silence is strategy. And mine was deliberate. Over the next week, I became the wife everyone admired. Graceful, calm, supportive. No one would have guessed that every morning between client meetings and design consultations, I was investigating my husband's private life like a professional detective. I didn't need to hack his phone or hire anyone. I just had to observe. The way he smiled at text. The times he took calls outside the house. The subtle way he mentioned a client who appreciates art. That was Clara, of course. Every clue led me closer to what I needed. Truth, leverage, and timing. One afternoon, while reviewing invoices at my office, I found it. A restaurant receipt from 3 weeks ago, charged to his corporate card. Dinner for 2. At the Golden Lily, Clara's Gallery restaurant. And that was when I made my decision. I would not expose them yet. No, I would invite someone into my plan. Someone equally betrayed. I searched online for Clara Bennett, art gallery owner, Kensington. Her profile was everywhere. Elegant photos, exhibitions, charity events. But what caught my attention wasn't her. It was her husband, Daniel Bennett. A financial consultant. Private. Quiet. A man whose expression in photos seemed calm. Too calm, perhaps, for someone who might already know he was being deceived. So I reached out. A polite email disguised as a professional inquiry. Dear Mr. Bennett, my name is Evelyn Grace. I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration between my interior design firm and your art advisory business. May we meet for coffee? It was perfect, plausible, unthreatening. He replied within an hour. Of course. Tomorrow afternoon, perhaps. And just like that, the game began. When I met Daniel for the first time, I noticed 2 things immediately. His eyes, kind, intelligent, but tired. And his hands, the kind of hands that belonged to someone who carried too many unspoken truths. We talked business for the first 10 minutes. Polite, professional, distant. Then I leaned slightly forward and said softly, Daniel, I know about Clara. He froze. Completely. I saw it in his eyes, the pain, the disbelief, the slow acceptance that someone else had finally said what he'd known all along. After a long silence, he whispered, How long have you known? I smiled sadly. Long enough to understand that pretending won't fix it. He exhaled, trembling slightly, then said, I didn't think anyone else knew. I've been watching her change for months. We sat there for almost an hour, 2 strangers bound by betrayal, sharing quiet truths over untouched cups of coffee. And by the time we stood to leave, an unspoken alliance had formed. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and I met several times, always in public, always under the guise of business. We exchanged information, observations, even photographs. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about clarity and justice. Together we built a timeline, their messages, their hotel visits, their client dinners. Every piece of evidence meticulously documented. But I wasn't collecting proof for court. No. I was building a stage. A stage on which their perfect little secret would collapse. Under the warm glow of restaurant lights, champagne glasses, and polite applause. One evening Daniel looked at me and asked, "Evelyn, what are we going to do with all this?" I smiled, the kind of smile that hides fire behind elegance. "We're going to give them exactly what they deserve. And let them destroy themselves in public." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You already have a plan, don't you?" "Oh, Daniel," I whispered. "I don't just have a plan. I have a reservation." That night I sat alone by my window, staring at the city lights. Somewhere out there my husband was probably laughing with her, thinking he had fooled me. But the truth was, I had already started designing the night that would end everything. There's a moment in every game of chess when you stop reacting and start controlling the board. That's where I was now. Every move my husband made, every call, every late night, every glance at his phone, was a piece I quietly repositioned in my mind. And soon there would be no escape. Daniel and I kept things professional on the surface. But beneath that, we were orchestrating something intricate, deliberate, poetic. He handled the technical side, retrieving transaction histories, checking schedules, confirming Clara's gallery events. I handled the emotional narrative, the timing, the setting, the exact atmosphere where their facade would crumble. It wasn't revenge born from rage. It was justice tailored with precision. I began documenting everything. Dates, texts, even his voice messages. He once called her my muse. I listened to that recording with a steady heart and thought, "You'll regret every word, darling." Daniel, meanwhile, discovered that Clara had been withdrawing money from their joint account. Small amounts, but frequent. Luxury dinners, hotel reservations, designer gifts. He emailed me the list. I replied with only 2 words. Perfect trail. Because each transaction was another thread in the tapestry I was weaving. People think betrayal ends when you catch them. But that's only half the story. The real ending is when they realize you knew and played along. And so I continued my role flawlessly. Every morning I kissed him goodbye. Every evening I asked about his day, pretending to listen as he lied through polished teeth. He was rehearsing his deceit. I was rehearsing my revenge. One afternoon, while reviewing a client's luxury restaurant redesign, inspiration struck me like lightning. A restaurant, dinner, public, beautifully staged. And then the perfect irony. The glass room, the most exclusive dining spot in London, open, elegant, and transparent. You could see everything from one table to another. Every glance, every smile, every betrayal reflected in polished glass. It was poetic. I reserved 2 tables side by side. One for them, one for us. The same date, the same time. A single wall of glass separating 2 worlds, their fantasy and my reality. When I told Daniel, his eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely," I said. "They'll think it's their secret night. But when they raise their glasses, they'll see us doing the same, sitting right next to them." "And then?" he asked softly. "Then," I said with a faint smile, "we let truth serve itself." The next few days were a blur of planning. I confirmed the reservation under a different name, ordered a designer dress in midnight blue, powerful, elegant, unforgettable. Daniel chose a suit that matched, understated, sharp. We weren't going to argue. We weren't going to shout. We were simply going to exist right where they least expected us. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is not destruction. It's witnessing their downfall with quiet grace. The night before the dinner, I stood before the mirror, brushing my hair slowly. I looked calm, almost serene. But inside me was a storm held together by poise. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of trust, all reduced to this moment. I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. You taught me betrayal, I whispered to my reflection. Now let me teach you consequence. The plan was in motion. Reservations confirmed. Outfits chosen. Timing synchronized. By this time tomorrow, everything would be over. And somewhere deep in my heart I wondered, would I finally feel peace? Or would revenge, no matter how elegant, still taste bittersweet? The morning of the dinner felt strangely calm. Too calm. I woke before sunrise, sunlight bleeding faintly through the curtains. The city was quiet, unaware that somewhere among its millions, for people were walking toward the same table, the same night, the same truth. My husband kissed my cheek before leaving for work. His cologne lingered in the air. He said he had a business dinner that might run late. I smiled. Of course, darling. Don't worry about me. Enjoy yourself. He smiled back, completely convinced that I was the picture of devotion. If only he knew. I spent the day as if it were any other Friday. Client calls, emails, a quick lunch with Nora. No one noticed the glint of resolve behind my calm demeanor. Even my assistant, who had unknowingly gathered half the evidence for me, thought I was simply preparing for a presentation. But my presentation was already written. In actions. In timing. In revenge. At 6 o'clock sharp, I began getting ready. The dress, midnight blue satin. Subtle shimmer under soft light. The jewelry minimal. I didn't need sparkle. Confidence was enough. I tied my hair into a low bun, letting a single strand fall loose. A deliberate imperfection, like a reminder that beneath control, there's still humanity. As I looked into the mirror, I whispered, no anger, no tears, only truth. At 7:30, Daniel picked me up. He looked composed, though his jaw was tight, his eyes heavy with the same exhaustion I felt, the exhaustion of knowing too much and saying too little. You look incredible, he said quietly. Tonight's not about me, I replied. It's about balance. He nodded. Neither of us needed to explain further. As the car glided through the city streets, lights flickered across the windshield. Red, gold, blue. Like signals counting down to the final move. When we arrived at the glass room, the maitre d' greeted us with a professional smile. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, he said. The false name under which I'd made the reservation. Right this way, please. He led us to a private section framed with crystal dividers. And there, just beyond the shimmering glass, was another table, reserved for my husband and his mistress, perfectly placed. They hadn't arrived yet. We had time. Daniel ordered wine. Neither of us drank much, but the glasses were props now. Part of the scene we were about to perform. We rehearsed one last time. No drama. No confrontation. Just presence. Our plan was simple. Sit, dine, laugh. Let them arrive. Let them believe in their illusion. And then when their world collides with ours, let silence speak. As the clock neared 8, I felt my heartbeat slow, not quicken. Strangely, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Because when you've been broken enough times, fear no longer shakes you. It sharpens you. At 8:05 I saw him enter. My husband. Flawless in his navy suit. Smiling that same smile he once used on me. And beside him, radiant in red silk, was Clara. Her hand brushed his arm as she whispered something that made him laugh. They looked like the perfect couple. A picture painted with deception. They sat. They didn't notice us. Not yet. I could see them clearly through the glass divider, the reflection of their laughter mirrored against ours. I leaned slightly toward Daniel and whispered, "Do you see it?" "I see everything," he murmured. We clinked our glasses softly, a quiet toast. Not to love, not to victory, but to closure. And then it happened, the moment every emotion in me had waited for. Clara turned her head slightly and froze. Her smile faltered. Her fingers tightened around her fork. Her eyes darted from Daniel to me, wide, terrified, guilty. A second later, my husband followed her gaze. And for the first time in years, I watched his mask break. The look on his face, shock, fear, disbelief, was everything I had hoped for. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Daniel sat tall, serene, his expression unreadable. I simply raised my glass and nodded politely across the glass wall, as though greeting old friends. The restaurant's quiet chatter continued. Only the four of us knew the truth that had just exploded in silence. In that moment I felt no hatred, only peace, because revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles from the next table and lets the guilty drown in their own reflection. It's strange how quickly everything can fall apart. One minute you're living inside a lie. The next, the truth is sitting just across the glass watching you eat. I remember that moment as if it were painted in slow motion. My husband's eyes locked on mine through the reflection, his smile fading inch by inch until nothing remained but panic. Clara tried to recover first, pretending to adjust her hair, forcing a laugh, but her trembling hands betrayed her. And me? I simply smiled. Not the kind of smile that hides pain, but one that reveals knowledge. He looked down quickly, pretending to read the menu. But I could see the sweat forming near his temple. Daniel noticed too. His lips curved just slightly, a gesture of restrained satisfaction. The waiter approached their table, unaware of the silent storm between us. "Would you like to begin with champagne?" he asked. "Yes," my husband said quickly. "Please, the best one." "Ah, the best one." Always trying to impress, even when his world was collapsing. Through the reflection, I could see his hands shaking as he lifted the glass. I raised mine in response, a slow, deliberate motion. Our eyes met again. I tilted my glass slightly, as if to say, "Cheers to your masterpiece of lies." He didn't drink. Clara finally spoke, her voice barely steady. "Evelyn, I think we should." "Sit," I interrupted gently. "We wouldn't want to make a scene, would we?" The entire restaurant was wrapped in quiet elegance. Polished silver, warm lights, and 1,000 small reflections danced on glass walls. No one else noticed us. No one saw the war taking place in silence. I didn't want shouting. I didn't want chaos. I wanted understanding, the kind that cuts deeper than words. So I stood, slowly, gracefully, walked around the glass divider, and approached their table. I could feel the weight of Daniel's eyes following, steady and protective, but he didn't move. He knew this was mine to finish. I stopped beside their table. My husband tried to smile, his lips twitching. "Evelyn, this isn't what it looks like." "You're right," I said softly. "It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it is." His face turned pale. Clara lowered her gaze, unable to meet mine. I leaned closer, voice calm and controlled. "Do you know what's fascinating, darling? The human ability to lie to those who would do anything for them. It's almost art." Clara flinched. "Evelyn, please, don't," I whispered. "You've said enough without words." I looked at my husband, the man who had shared my life, my dreams, my home. The man I once trusted more than anyone. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "You could have been honest. But instead, you built a theater of deception and invited me to sit in the audience." He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said again softly. Then I straightened my shoulders. "I reserved the table next to yours for a reason. Because I wanted you to see that I know. And I wanted her to see that she was never the secret you thought she was." Every word fell like a note in a requiem. Precise, final, unanswerable. Silence wrapped around us again. No yelling, no tears, no drama. Only the sharp sound of truth. I leaned slightly toward Clara. Do you know what the saddest part is? We could have been friends. You're elegant, intelligent, but you chose to borrow what was never yours, and now you'll always carry the taste of guilt in every luxury you touch. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw not a rival but a mirror. Another woman who had made the wrong choice, and would spend a lifetime regretting it. I turned to my husband one last time. I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to destroy you. You've already done that yourself. I'm here to say goodbye. Publicly, politely, perfectly. Then I smiled, a calm, final smile, and placed a small white envelope on the table. Inside was a neatly folded copy of the divorce papers I'd already signed. You don't need to call me, I said. Just sign. He looked at the envelope as though it were a bomb. In a way it was. A quiet explosion of truth. I walked back to our table. Daniel stood as I returned, pulling out my chair like a gentleman. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The silence between us was full of victory. Not loud, not cruel, just final. As I sipped the last of my wine, I saw them leave, quickly, awkwardly, broken. Two people who thought they could hide in the dark, now exposed under the glow of 1,000 glass reflections. And I thought to myself, sometimes you don't have to destroy someone's world. You just have to show them what it really looks like.